Смотри, вот сценарий YouTube, видео, какие запросы мне забить в Google для того, чтобы найти картинки для видеоряда. In the old photographs, you can almost spot it without seeing it. A potato sack in the corner, a peeling knife on the table, a pot already warming on the stove. Because when money ran thin and the pantry looked worried, one food kept showing up like a quiet promise. The potato. It did not need much. A cool cellar, a dark cabinet, a little time, and when the day got hard, potatoes could become dinner in 100 different ways. But what many people forget is this. The poorest potato meals were not just cheap food. They were systems. They were survival plans. They were the kind of cooking that said, we will eat tonight, even if the world outside feels uncertain. And one of the most surprising meals of all was made from the part most people throw away, the peel. In some kitchens, even that became supper. We will get there. Tonight, we are stepping back into those kitchens. 25 forgotten poor man potato dinners. Not as recipes, as scenes, as memories, as proof that ordinary people knew how to make something out of almost nothing. Potatoes became a lifeline because they were affordable and filling, and because they stored well without refrigeration. In many American homes, especially in working and rural communities, a sack of potatoes could carry a family through a week, sometimes through longer than that. Potatoes were also flexible. You could boil them, fry them, mash them, bake them, stretch them into soup, or use them to make a small bit of meat feel like a feast. And in hard times, food is not only about taste. It is about warmth. It is about calories. It is about the comfort of a full plate when the day has been heavy. So let's start where a lot of poor man dinners began, with a pot of soup simmering low while the house slowly warms up. Potato soup with milk was the kind of dinner that appeared when the pantry looked empty, but the potato sack was still there. It was diced potatoes simmered until soft, with onions when available, then finished with milk if the household could spare it. If milk was short, water did the job, and a little fat added comfort. People ate it because it was cheap, filling, and gentle. It mattered because it could feed everyone from one pot. The small detail is the steam fogging the window above the sink while someone stirs and waits. From soup, the next step was often the skillet, because a hot skillet could make humble food feel rich. Fried potatoes and onions was a simple pan supper that smelled like thrift. Sliced potatoes cooked in a little fat until browned, with onions softened and sweetened in the same pan. Some families used bacon grease, saved in a jar, because one spoonful could change the whole meal. People ate it because it was fast and satisfying. It mattered because it turned two cheap ingredients into a dinner with real flavor. The human detail is the sizzle, steady and comforting, pulling tired people toward the kitchen. And when there was nothing to go with those fried potatoes, many families reached for the oldest trick in the book. Potatoes and gravy on bread was not fancy. It was survival comfort. Mashed or sliced potatoes served over bread, with gravy made from drippings if there were any, or from flour and water if there were not. People ate it because gravy made everything feel like a meal, and bread made the plate bigger. It mattered because it stretched a small amount of fat into a full supper. The small detail is the bread soaking through, softening under the gravy, turning scraps into something you eat slowly. From gravy plates, many homes moved back to the pot again because boiling was cheap and dependable. Boiled cabbage and potatoes was plain, honest, and common in working households. Potatoes for calories, cabbage for bulk, and a little green in winter. In some homes, a small piece of salt pork flavored the pot. In others, it was just salt and pepper, filling the house and clinging to coats. And once you had potatoes, one of the richest poor man tricks was to mash them with something green. Colcannon, or mashed potatoes with greens, showed up in many families with Irish roots, but versions appeared in all kinds of kitchens. Potatoes mashed with cooked cabbage, kale, or any greens the house had, plus a bit of butter when possible. People ate it because it made a small amount of greens feel like part of a bigger meal. It mattered because it added nourishment to a starch-heavy table. The human detail is the steam rising as the mash is folded together, turning two humble foods into one warm comfort. For mash, the next dinner often came from leftovers, because poor kitchens were experts at second chances. Potato cakes from leftover mash were yesterday's mashed potatoes turned into today's supper. The mash was mixed with a little flour if needed, shaped into patties, and fried until crisp at the edges. People ate them because leftovers could not be wasted, and frying created that golden crust that felt like a reward. It mattered because it made the same ingredients feel new. The small detail is the first flip in the skillet, when the cake holds together and you know dinner's working. And what came next was even more familiar, especially in homes that remembered hard winters. Potato pancakes were a cousin to potato cakes, often made from grated raw potatoes mixed with a bit of flour and sometimes egg when available. Fried in a thin layer of fat, they came out crisp and hot. People ate them because potatoes were cheap and frying made them satisfying. It mattered because a plate of potato pancakes could feel like a real treat without costing much. The human detail is the plate lined with a cloth or paper to catch grease, because every bit of fat mattered. From pancakes, many families used potatoes to stretch meat that was in short supply. Corned beef hash with potatoes was a classic poor man dinner because it turned a small amount of meat into a full pan. Potatoes diced and fried, mixed with chopped corned beef, and cooked until brown in places. Onions made it even better when the pantry had them. People ate it because it was filling and tasted hearty. It mattered because it made meat feel present even when it was scarce. The human detail is the cook pressing the hash down, waiting for that crust because crisp edges felt like luxury. And sometimes, the meat in the hash was not corned beef at all. Potato and hot dog skillet was a working-class standby in many decades. Sliced potatoes fried with onions and cheap hot dogs added for flavor and protein. It was fast, it fed everyone, and it tasted better than it sounded. People ate it because it used inexpensive ingredients that were easy to find. It mattered because it made a small purchase feel like a full supper. The human detail is the hot dog slices browning at the edges, changing the smell of the whole pan. From skillet suppers, the oven became the next tool for stretching. Shepherd's pie, often called cottage pie in some homes, was a way to hide leftovers and make them feel like a new dinner. A thin layer of cooked meat and vegetables, sometimes very thin, topped with mashed potatoes and baked until the top browned. People ate it because it used scraps and still looked like a planned meal. It mattered because it turned leftovers into something you could serve with pride. The human detail is the fork marks on top, making ridges that brown first, like a small decoration for a hard day. And for households that needed a meatless dinner that still felt complete, potatoes did the heavy lifting. Scalloped potatoes were thin slices baked in a simple sauce made from milk, flour, salt, and pepper, sometimes with onions. In wealthier weeks, a little cheese joined in. In leaner weeks, it stayed plain and still comforted. People ate it because potatoes were cheap and filling, and baking made them feel special. It mattered because it offered a satisfying dinner without meat. The human detail is the browned edge of the dish, where the sauce thickens and turns golden. A close cousin of scalloped potatoes showed up when the kitchen had just enough cheese to make it feel rich. Potatoes au gratin was potatoes baked with a light layer of cheese, not heavy, just enough for flavor. It was often a careful dish where cheese was measured with restraint. People ate it because it felt indulgent without requiring much meat. It mattered because a little dairy could make a humble food feel like celebration. The human detail is the way the cheese bubbles at the top, and everyone watches the oven as if the smell alone is feeding them. From baked dishes, many poor man potato dinners turned to the simplest form of all. Baked potatoes with butter and salt was sometimes supper by itself. One potato, split open, salted, with a small pat of butter or a spoon of saved fat. In some homes, a bit of leftover beans or gravy was spooned on top. People ate it because it was cheap, hot, and required almost no extra ingredients. It mattered because it could feed someone fast after a long day. The human detail is the potato held in both hands, too hot at first, warming fingers before it warms the stomach. And when the pantry held beans, potatoes became the perfect partner. Baked potato with beans was a poor man dinner that felt bigger than it was. A hot baked potato split open and topped with warm beans, sometimes canned, sometimes from a pot cooked earlier. People ate it because beans added protein and the potato added bulk, creating a full meal from two cheap staples. It mattered because it was both filling and practical. The human detail is the spoon tapping the potato skin as the beans are piled in, like the bowl and the plate became one. From beans, the next meal often came from eggs, especially in households that kept a few hens or could afford a carton now and then. Potato and egg skillet supper was potatoes fried or softened in a pan, then eggs scrambled in or cracked on top and covered until set. A little onion and pepper made it taste like more. People ate it because eggs added protein and potatoes stretched the plate. It mattered because it made a full dinner from inexpensive ingredients in one pan. The human detail is the lid placed over the skillet, trapping steam so the eggs set, while everyone waits quietly for it to finish. And if the house had corn, potatoes could stretch into something even heartier. Potato and corn chowder was a thick, warming soup made from potatoes, corn, onion, and milk when available. Some homes used canned corn in winter. Some used fresh corn in summer. People ate it because it was filling and comforting, and it made a small amount of milk feed many bowls. It mattered because it offered warmth and calories without meat. The human detail is the chowder's thickness clinging to the spoon, making the bowl feel heavier with every bite. Now we reach a meal that sounds almost too plain, but it shows up in countless memories. Potatoes and broth with dumplings was a poor man pot where potatoes simmered in a simple broth, sometimes just salted water with onion. Then dumplings were dropped in to make it a complete dinner. People ate it because flour and potatoes were cheap and always available. It mattered because dumplings turned a thin pot into a filling meal. The human detail is lifting the lid and seeing dumplings puffed on top, like the pot is offering comfort out of steam. From dumplings, many homes added a little meat, just a little, not for size, but for flavor. Potatoes and sausage skillet used 1 or 2 sausages sliced thin, fried with potatoes and onions. The sausage portion was often small, stretched on purpose, so each bite carried some flavor without using much. People ate it because it tasted hearty and filled plates fast. It mattered because it turned a modest meat purchase into a family meal. The human detail is the sausage coins browned at the edges, scattered through potatoes like little rewards. And when sausage was too expensive, some kitchens relied on canned fish because it kept and it stretched. Salmon patties with mashed potatoes was a common working class dinner. Canned salmon mixed with crumbs or potato, shaped and fried, served with mashed potatoes on the side. People ate it because canned fish was shelf-stable protein and potatoes made the plate filling. It mattered because it provided nutrition when fresh meat was scarce. The human detail is the careful eating, sometimes picking around tiny bones, not complaining because the meal was earned. From salmon, a similar idea showed up in coastal and inland kitchens alike. Tuna and potato casserole was a simple baked dish that used potatoes sliced or mashed, combined with canned tuna, onions, and a creamy sauce made from milk or soup shortcuts. People ate it because tuna was affordable and potatoes stretched it into many servings. It mattered because it turned a small can into a full family supper. The human detail is the casserole bubbling at the edges, the smell drifting into the next room and calling everyone to the table without a word. And what came next was even more tied to working communities, especially mining towns and factory neighborhoods. Potato hand pies, sometimes called pasties in certain regions, were dough pockets filled with potatoes, onion, and a small amount of meat if available. They could be carried to work and eaten warm or cold. People ate them because they were portable and filling, and they used cheap ingredients. It mattered because a working day needed food that traveled. The human detail is the crimped edge, pressed by hand or fork, sealing dinner inside like a small lunchbox. From portable pies, some families leaned into the simplest cold dinner of all, especially in summer. Potato salad supper was not always a side dish. In some homes, it was the meal. Potatoes boiled and chopped, mixed with onion, pickles, and a modest dressing. When eggs were scarce, one egg might be sliced thin and distributed through the bowl, so every serving got a piece. People ate it because potatoes were cheap and filling, and cold food saved fuel on hot days. It mattered because it stretched small amounts of protein. The human detail is the careful egg slicing, like every ring mattered. And when the end of the week arrived, the potato often became a tool for cleaning out the fridge without admitting that was what you were doing. Everything in the pan potato hash was a skillet supper made from leftover potatoes mixed with whatever small scraps were around. A bit of cabbage, a spoon of beans, a piece of meat, an onion, anything, fried together until hot and browned. People ate it because it prevented waste and made leftovers taste new. It mattered because a household budget depended on using everything. The human detail is the smell changing as the pan cooks, because you can almost identify yesterday's dinner hiding in today's. Now, we come to that dish we teased at the beginning, the one built from something most people throw away. Potato peel soup, in its most basic form, was peels simmered in broth or salted water, often with onion, then thickened slightly with flour or finished with a splash of milk when possible. It was not glamorous. It was what you did when you had to. People ate it because even peels contained food, and waste was not an option. It mattered because it shows the true edge of hardship, where every scrap counts. The human detail is the careful washing of the potatoes before peeling, because the peel was no longer trash. It was dinner, and once peels were treated as food, another waste part could become something crisp and satisfying. Fried potato skins and peels, in some homes, were cooked in a little fat and salted, eaten as a snack supper when there was nothing else ready. Not the modern restaurant version stuffed with cheese, just simple fried skins. People ate it because it used every part of the potato and delivered a crunchy texture that felt like a treat. It mattered because morale can be fed by texture as much as flavor. The human detail is the small plate set near the stove, peels eaten one by one while waiting for the next pot to finish. From crispy scraps, we moved to a poor man dinner that was often made when the pantry was down to the basics, and the cook needed something warm right now. Smashed potatoes with buttermilk and salt was a humble bowl that carried real comfort. Potatoes boiled and smashed, mixed with buttermilk or sour milk, salted and peppered. It was tangy, warm, and filling. People ate it because buttermilk was often cheaper and lasted, and potatoes made a meal out of it. It mattered because it provided calories and warmth with very little cost. The human detail is the wooden spoon stirring through steam as the buttermilk smell rises sharp and familiar. And finally, we end with a dish that quietly proves what potatoes did best. Potato leftovers casserole, sometimes known in families by no name at all, was a baking dish dinner built from yesterday's potatoes, a little onion, maybe a spoon of cheese, or a bit of meat, all baked until hot and browned. It changed every time. That was the point. People ate it because it turned leftovers into a fresh meal and fed everyone without extra shopping. It mattered because the budget lived in the gaps between meals. The human detail is the casserole dish on the table, still steaming, served in careful portions like the cook is trying to make it feel fair. By the time you step back from these 25 poor man potato dinners, you start to see the larger story behind them. The potato was not only cheap, It was dependable. It stored well. It cooked in any kind of kitchen. It could be dressed up with gravy, stretched with soup, crisped in a skillet, or baked into a casserole that felt like celebration. But what many people forget is that these meals were not only about hunger. They were about dignity, about making a plate that looked like a meal even when money was tight, about feeding children without scaring them, about keeping a household steady when the world outside was not. And yes, some of these dinners were plain. Some were repetitive. Some were born from real hardship. But there was also quiet skill in them, a kind of wisdom passed down without speeches. Save the grease. Save the peel. Stretch the meat. Use the leftovers. Keep something warm on the stove. So the next time you see a sack of potatoes at the store, or a single potato in your own kitchen, take a second to notice what it represents. Not a trend, not a joke, a lifeline that has fed working people for generations. Because sometimes history does not live in grand events. Sometimes it lives in a pot on low heat, in the smell of onions in a skillet, and in a simple potato dinner that says, in the plainest way possible, we made it through today.